So for our next assignment, I'm going to ask you to come to this website called CodePen. The URL is codepen.io. And what CodePen is the library of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and some other technology, a bunch of little projects where you can see the projects, you can play with them a little bit, you can download the source code, and you can modify it and use it for your own. So a lot of people use CodePen. The trick to doing a lot of web publishing, whether it's HTML or CSS or JavaScript or something else, is that you start with someone else's code and then you modify it and make it your own. So CodePen is really, really good for this. CodePen has many different kinds of projects, but I'm going to ask you to find either a JavaScript project or a CSS animation project. So let's get started. The first thing that you want to do is you need to log into CodePen. Now I'm already logged in over here, but you can give CodePen a dummy email address. You can use your Facebook account or other social media account, but you need to be logged in order to be able to download the projects. So when I go to CodePen, it immediately gives me a little menu here of a bunch of what they call picked pens. And pens are projects. And so these are just kind of random projects that people have put together. So let's take a look at this one. This is called Jagged Chevron Pattern. I'm going to click on it. Okay. So this is the CodePen interface. So down here at the bottom, it shows what the output in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever it's got going on, what the output looks like in the browser. Then we have little windows of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if there's some other technology that's used here, it will specify that. But for this project, it looks like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I'm going to tell you something that this is incomplete. This is not the complete HTML, it's not the complete CSS, it's not the complete JavaScript. It's just enough to sort of let you see what's going on and to decide whether or not you want to download the source files. So let's start over here in the HTML. So we can see that this is the output. It's some kind of geometric design, right? And we don't see any geometric design here. It's not a picture. So it's been created using some CSS elements and some JavaScript. And a lot of times when you create images just in HTML and CSS, you use something called Canvas. So we don't have time in this course to go into Canvas, but if you get curious, you can Google it. It's a kind of a way of setting up images on HTML. That's not completely true, but that's what I'm going to say for now. Okay, so all we have here is an ID called Canvas. Inside of a Canvas tag, Canvas is actually a tag. In the CSS, we really don't have anything going on. We say the body has margin 0. That means that there's no white space around the edges of the body. Display block just means have it display like it's in a paragraph. So it looks like all of the action occurs over here in the JavaScript. And this is JavaScript. It's kind of a little bit more advanced version of JavaScript than we've been using. So here at the top we have let canvas, let CTX, let WH, let colors. The word let is a substitute for the word var, or variable. So you could also say var canvas, var CTX, var WH, and var colors. Okay, so some versions of JavaScript use let instead of var. Okay, then we have a function. This function is called setup, and we can see here it says, oh, document.querySelector ID canvas. So document.querySelector is kind of like document get element by ID, but instead of using an ID, this uses something more generic called query selector. And so in this case, we're going to get canvas, hashtag canvas. And we can see it's right here, the ID. Okay, so it's going to do something to canvas. Okay. The next function is called reset. I'm going to say that this probably resets the page every time you load it. And there's a function called setup colors. And even though we don't know exactly what this is doing, we can see here, it's a function, and then it says colors equal, and then it has the square bracket and a bunch of hex colors. We know these are hex colors because it's got the hashtag in front of it, and it's got 6 digits following it. So anytime you see something that looks like a variable, which is what this is, see we did up here, let colors, that means we're declaring a variable called colors. And here's where it is. So anytime you see a variable that has as its value some square brackets and a list of items inside of it, that's an array. If you have finished the JavaScript tutorial on Code Academy, you will have run into arrays. So what this is basically a list of colors. So instead of having a variable called color1, color2, color3, color4, we have one variable and it's a list. And that's how this works. So this is an array. So here, let me show you one aspect of CodePen. So we can probably guess that these colors here are the same as these colors down here. And that's what they're referencing. And the nice thing about CodePen is that I can go ahead and edit one of these colors and I will see the changes taking place over here. So let's try this. So I'm not sure what color this is. I'm going to erase it. I'm going to put in a named color. Let's put in chartreuse. Okay. Now you can see chartreuse is this lime green color. We just introduced that. Now it wasn't clear to me where the chartreuse would appear. It wasn't. But I knew that if I changed this color someplace on here, something would change to the color chartreuse. Okay, let's try another one. Let's change this one to deep pink. Oh, there we go. Very pretty. Okay, how about if we change this one to coral? Okay, very nice. So you can see, so even though we don't quite understand how this works, we can still know enough to try to make some changes. And this is the way of working with JavaScript on the web for a lot of people. And it's the way most people learn. You may not know everything that's going on in a JavaScript or in HTML or CSS, but you know enough that if you try to play with things a little bit, you can make some changes. And at some point, you reach a point where you can modify these things significantly in a way that you would like to modify them. Okay, let's try a couple others. You guys saw something here about shadows. Okay, so here's this variable ctx, and I have no idea what it is, but shadow color is a property, a CSS property, and here it says black. And if we look out here, you can see that there is a shadow going on. That's what makes it look like the chevrons are stacked one on top of the other. And the color of the shadow is black. So if I just change that to something else like, I don't know, gold. Oh my goodness. Okay, we changed the shadow color to gold. We can see shadow blur, shadow offset X, shadow offset Y. Now again, not 1000% clear how this works, but I'm going to guess that that's the number of pixels by which the shadow is offset on the horizontally. So if I change 3 to 20, we should see a big difference. Okay, there it goes. Let me change shadow offset Y to 20. Okay, very nice. Okay, so anyhow, so that just goes to show you that here inside of CodePen, you can make some changes just to see if you want to work with this particular pen. So let's say you like this pen and you want to work with it. What you want to do is you want to go down to the bottom of the page where it says export. Now in order to export this, you must be logged in. So you must log into CodePen. You must create an account and log in. And don't get the Pro. You don't need the Pro. Don't give them any money. Just log in. So I'm going to click export and it gives me a few options. I'm going to export zip. Once again, don't go to Pro. You don't want to give them money. Just export zip. It says you have unsaved changes. Do you still want to export? I'm going to yes, continue export. Pen zip is ready to download. I'm going to download it. Okay, and this is going to download to a folder, a zipped file called Jagged Chevron. I'm going to open it. There it is. Okay, and this is my folder. This is what I downloaded from CodePen. So there are two main folders here. One is dist and one is src for source. What you want to work with, which has all of the HTML and CSS and JavaScript, is the dist. Don't work with the source that sometimes does not have all of the elements that you need. You want to work with dist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open index.html inside of Dreamweaver. Okay, so this is it. So this is the HTML. It's very simple. This at the top it says doc type HTML. That means it's HTML5. There's the head. The title says CodePen Jagged Chevron Pattern. And there's a link to the style sheet. It's called style.css. Now they do something a little bit differently here than we do. When you have a file that's in the same folder, you can do // and then the name of the file. We usually just do this, so it's just the name of the file. You can do it either way. So, but when you do see // a single // it means it's in the same folder. Okay. Then we have the body. The only thing that's in the body is the canvas tag with an ID of canvas. And then at the bottom, we have the JavaScript, the link to the JavaScript. So here they have put the link to the JavaScript in the bottom. And there are two places where you can put a link to a JavaScript. Usually people put it in the head, so it would go after the style sheet, but you can also put it at the bottom. And sometimes people like to put it at the bottom, and at the bottom I mean before the close body. And the reason for it is because it gives the rest of the page an opportunity to load. So if the JavaScript needs some of the elements that are in the page to work, they will already be loaded before the JavaScript loads. Okay, so let's look at the CSS. There it is, very simple, just like we saw in CodePen. And now script.js. Okay, so this tells us a little bit about who made it. You can go check them out if you want to. Okay, we have our variables. Again, instead of var, they're using let canvas, let ctx, let wh. I'll bet that's width and height. Let colors. Here's the first function, setup. This sets up the page. Function reset. This resets the page. And function setup colors. Okay, so it's going to choose the colors here. And then function draw. And this is how the drawing goes. And this is literally probably a variation of SVG, which is a drawing, kind of a set of drawing instructions that you can use in HTML. You also can create SVG files in Adobe Illustrator. And if you are sophisticated enough that you save your Illustrator file as an SVG, you can bring the instructions into HTML and modify them. That is a few steps down the road though, but I'm just going to tell you that that's a possibility. Okay, So I'm not going to worry too much about this. I can tell you I see some 4s here. 4 let y equal number of steps y plus 5. Y is less than -5. Y is subtract 1 from y. This is a loop. This is a for loop. Again, if you have finished the JavaScript module in Code Academy, you will recognize this. So we know that the chevron pattern is repeating. So this is one of the ways that it repeats the drawing through the for loop. Let's just go ahead and preview this. Okay, there's our beautiful chevron. Now let's go ahead and make some changes that we know we can make. Okay, so let's go ahead and make some changes that we know we can make. So once again, I'll change the color. Let's make this one chartreuse. Chartreuse. I think that's how you spell it. And we'll make this one deep pink. And we'll make this one, I don't know, how about dark orange? I think those are all good colors. All right, and then if we look at our pen, our preview now, we can see the changes that we have made. Okay, so the one thing that's kind of problematic about this, like you're like, that is a super cool background. I would really like to add it to my HTML. It might be a little tricky because what happens here is that the JavaScript generates everything that's in the canvas, and probably if you add something, it's going to overwrite. So if I put, I don't know, section hello world, even if I went in here, let me see, let me add section, let's do font size 4M, let's say, I'll give it a Z index. A Z index, that's how things are stacked one on top of the other. So by default, everything is at 0. So if you give this a positive number, it'll put it on top. So I'll make it 5. And I'm going to say position absolute, and I'm going to say top 50%, left 50%. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we can see it. Oh yes, there we go. Okay, so if I wanted to put some text on top of this, I can't put anything inside of the canvas tags because the JavaScript is filling inside the canvas tags. So if I put something in there, it will be overwritten by the JavaScript. But if I add some additional HTML after this, and then I use positioning, I can put some things in here. You only really have to worry about this if this is what you want to do. So just let me show you something else. I'm going to say background color RGBA, background color RGBA. I'm going to say white, and I'm going to make it semi-transparent, so 0.5, and then I'm going to say padding 10%. See what that does. Oh look, now we can read it, and we can use the numbers here. We can use the top and the left to move that thing around. So I could say top 25%, left 25%. Okay, and I could put some content on top of this really groovy chevron background. Okay, so sometimes you can figure out a way to integrate. For some others, let's look for popular. I want to find one that has some sort of advanced. Okay, here we go. I like this one. It seemed simple, but it wasn't. This is card hover interactions. So for every card, there's a simple hover and a button comes up and you can click it. So it would probably be fairly simple to change some of it. Maybe you'd have to download it and see. But let me show you the really funky thing. See here what says CSS, and in brackets next to it, it says SCSS. So SCSS is a variation on CSS. Okay, so you can see it doesn't really look like some of the CSS that we have seen. Okay. And it's not that different. You could probably figure it out. I'm not going to go into it, however, but you could try. You could try it. You could see if you could replace these cards with some of your cards. There's no JavaScript here. It's all in the CSS. Once again, if you wanted to play with this, you go to the export button, download the export.zip. And remember, when you open the file, you want to open the dist folder, not the src, the dist folder. Okay, so we'll go over a couple more CodePen projects during class time. But I wanted to show you on Canvas. I have pulled some CodePen projects that I think would be pretty easy to modify, and you can use one of these if you would like. So if we go into Canvas, and we go to our course, and we go to modules, so under CodePen, I have a few zipped files. There's some JavaScript projects, there's some animation projects, and some parallax scroll projects. So under JavaScript, these are basically little games. There's a madlib, there's a hangman, a memory game. There's under animation, this is a series of little animations that you can use for loading, like waiting for things to load, but you can play with them and make them yours. This is kind of a little animated scene. You can check it out, see how it works. And then these are parallax scrolls. Okay, so let's look at the madlibs one. So I'm going to download it. And if you use the madlibs for your project, I'm going to recommend that you use the madlibs that I put here on Canvas, because I had to simplify something inside of the files that they submitted. I think they forgot and they left some extra things in some of the extra text that kind of messes things up. So I made a couple changes and now they work fine. Okay, so inside of madlibs, as in almost all of the CodePen projects, you will see two folders, dist and source. You want to use dist. You always want to use dist. This is the one with all the goodies in it. And we can see we have an HTML, we have a JavaScript file, and we have a CSS. So I'm going to try to open this in Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver is thinking. Okay, I'm going to just open it from Dreamweaver. As you know, Dreamweaver sometimes opens the last thing that you opened, and it's not always what you want. So I'm going to make sure I get what I want here. Okay, so this is the madlibs. I'm going to go ahead and preview it. Okay, and it's very simple. And if you know how madlibs works, you are asked to provide certain kinds of words. So here's a noun, an adjective, a verb, someone's name, exclamation, and then it creates a sentence out of what you give them. So let's say we'll put a noun in here. We'll say cat. Adjective, we'll say fat. Verb, we'll say purred. Someone's name, how about pistachio? And exclamation, great. Libbit. And then down here, pistachio, purred fat, cat, great. Okay, doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, sometimes the Mad Libs do, sometimes they don't. But this is a very simple little project. I'm going to show you how it's put together, and it would be very easy to modify into a much better Mad Lib generator. Okay, so we have 3 files. We have the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. The HTML is pretty straightforward. It says doc type HTML at the top, and then we have a style sheet, and then we have a link to a fancy font. This fancy font is from Google Fonts. It's called Fugaz 1, and so they're using that. Okay. And then in the body, we have an H1. It says madlibs. That's the heading. And then all of the inputs, all of the things that the user types in is in the forms. It's a form. So if you did the HTML in Code Academy, you should be familiar with this. So this has a label of noun, and it says input type equal text, ID equal noun. So what that means is there's going to be a text box input area, and the ID of that is going to be noun. So that's this one right here. This box is ID noun. And then adjective, ID adjective. Past tense verb, ID verb. Someone's name, ID name, exclamation, ID exclamation. Okay. Then we have the button, and it says, okay, this button says Mad Libs, or it says Libit, but when it's clicked, here's the event, it says go look for a function called Mad Libs. All right, and that function is going to be found here in this JavaScript. So notice again, they put the JavaScript, the link to the JavaScript at the bottom of the document. This is something you can do. Sometimes people prefer to do it this way. You can also put it in the head. Okay, so let's go take a look first at the JavaScript. Okay, here's function madlibs. So this is a different way of setting up a function. You could say function madlibs, but here we're going to say I'm creating a variable. This variable is called madlibs, and what it is, it's a function. This is a little bit out of style. I think it's much more in style now to say function madlibs, but they both basically mean the same thing. Okay, so we have a bunch of variables here. So one is called story div, one is called name, one is called adjective, one is called noun, one is called exclamation, and one is called verb. And so what goes into them? So first of all, let's start here with name. So we're going to create a variable, we're going to call it name, and inside of it, we're going to put what's inside of that. We're going to go look at that get element by ID, that ID called name in the HTML, and we're going to get the value. Now value is something that is present in forms, and the value basically means whatever it is that they type inside of this div, of this ID. So in this case it would be the word cat. So in this case, name is going to be cat. Okay. Although that's not true. This is noun, right? Yeah, noun. So this is in a different order than this is, but it's the same thing. So this is noun. This is ID noun. So noun, we're going to get the noun ID and find out what the value is. Okay. Okay. So once we collect, this is how we collect everything that the user enters. Once we have all that information, we're going to say, okay, go find story div. Story div is element story. It's kind of a funny way of doing it. I probably would have done this get element by ID story dot inner HTML equals. Let's see if we can find story. Yeah, here we go. So story, this is story right here. So this is where the answer goes. So I can change this. Story div dot inner HTML. Story div is document get element by ID story. So I can replace this with document get element by ID, story. Okay, right. So that's the same thing as saying story div dot inner HTML. It's just a shortened way of doing it. So I just replaced that so you could see, because this is what we've been using. Equal, so this is what we're going to put in. So name is the first one. That's why they have it in this order. So name, the name plus space, so it's going to be, name plus space plus verb plus a plus adjective plus noun plus comma plus exclamation point. So they're going to compose the sentence this way. All right, so while you can do it that way, it doesn't make for a super satisfying Mad Lib. So let's try this. Let's try noun. Let's try computer. Let's try adjective slow. Yeah, slow computer, right. Verb, I don't know, meeting someone's name, pistachio, exclamation, now, I don't know, live it. Pistachio meeting a slow computer now. Not super satisfying, but you can see how this works. So here it says we're going to have name plus space plus verb plus a plus adjective. So it's name, okay, and then a space, and then verb, and then a plus adjective. So you can see how it created that. So we can make this a little bit better by saying something like, I don't know, we could add some stuff here. We could say, quote, my cat, and name, and verb. Let's say was, and verb, and blank, a blank, and saw a space noun, comma, and said exclamation. Okay, that might even fix that a little bit better. Okay, so noun, let's call this, I don't know, let's call it a car. Adjective, we'll call it blue. Past tense, purred. Someone's name, pistachio, and exclamation, wow. Okay. My cat Pistachio was purred. A blue saw a car and said, wow. Okay. All right, so purred, oh, past tense. I thought this was ing. Purred a blue car and said, wow. I see. Okay. All right. I still think there's ways to make that better.